Whoa, hello, jeez. You scared me.
Well, hello there, my, gender ambiguous dear friend. Why so blue?
Oh, well, I'm just, burying my Tales Games videos.
Oh!
So, do you want anything, or,
Don't be sad, my little friend. How about you make a new video?
About what?
The new game, of course.
You mean Secret of the Mimic? I don't know. That game has been pretty straightforward. Most videos about this game have either been summary videos or, completely insane. I literally have no idea what to even talk about.
It will be about friendship.
Friendship? Really?
Yes, because friendship is the true gift all along.
I don't know, kid. I don't think making a video about friendship will be that easy.
It was that easy.
So, let's start off with the obvious. Today, we won't be talking about these guys. I know you probably want me, the book lover, to talk about these guys. But I'm currently still grieving, so the whole canonicity stuff will be for another video. Someday. Maybe. Anyways, today we'll be covering the newest game, Secret of the Mimic. One of my favorite games in the franchise so far. Not only is it a game with a rich story and characters, but it's also a game that's so pleasing to look at. It's definitely one of the most aesthetically pleasing looking FNAF games. For a long time, I was wondering what I would even cover about this game. Cause let's be honest here. Compared to most FNAF games, this one is just pretty straightforward, all things considered. Yes, there are still some unsolved mysteries like, who is the moon guy, what's up with the tiger, which ending is canon. But apart from those, most of the current debates about this game just seem to be about arguing details, semantics, things that don't really change much about the overall plot. So for a while I was wondering if I should even cover this game. At this point, there were already so many videos just summarizing the main plot. So it was pretty pointless for me to just do the exact same thing. But after talking to some friends, mostly to my friend Zarek, I started to recognize some patterns between the themes in this game with those of the themes of the previous Steel Wolf FNAF games. It's like a lot of the things that have been set up in Help Wanted seem to be expanded upon in this game. And I'd love to dive deeper into that today. So instead of theorizing, I'll be mostly discussing themes and symbolism, and how those themes may influence the story moving forward. So let's not wait any longer and dive into it. Or wait. I'm a FNAF theorist now. I can't just do it like this. I need to invent a silly name, otherwise nobody will ever take me seriously. Kid, get the wheel with theory names. Does God friendship work? Is that clickbaitable enough?
Why don't we just go for, friendship theory?
Okay, yeah, sure, I guess that works. So by this point, you are probably already familiar with the plot of Edwin and Fiona. Most YouTube theorists already made huge summary videos of the game's plot before me. And even if you haven't seen those, you probably played the game by yourself. The story of this game is pretty straightforward compared to most FNAF games. Yes, there are still some secrets, but overall the plot is pretty clear. But still, before I dive into the actual theorizing section in Chapter 2, I want to specifically clarify the themes in this game first. So let's start at the beginning. Even though Arnold is the player character of the game, in reality he's not really the protagonist nor the antagonist of the actual game's story. Sure, Arnold is the main character, the character through which the story is told, but he isn't the protagonist. He isn't the driving force behind the story that's being told. The real protagonists of the story are the Murray family. Arnold is nothing more than a footnote in the actual story. An innocent bystander who's accidentally forced to experience the aftermath of someone else's story. Every room, every audio file, and every note we find tells the story of two very different people, and how those people affected the life of the people around them, Edwin and Fiona Murray. Of course, like any story, it starts with the two characters meeting one another. In one of the earliest tapes we can find in the game, we hear Fiona meeting Edwin for the first time.
Excuse me, can I borrow your voice for a project?
What for? I don't even know you. I'm brand new here. Let's start again. I'm Fiona, and you are?
Edwin Murray. This is my dad's place. But that doesn't matter. I heard you were a puppeteer, and I wanted to record your voice.
Oh, well, yes, I used to be.
Well, that's great. Do you mind if I record you for a test?
So, you want to record me with that? What is it?
It's a new type of audio cassette recorder.
I've never seen one like that before.
I made it.
Even if we don't learn much about their childhood or their lives before this moment, the tape perfectly sets up their character and personality. We learn that Fiona used to be a puppeteer, and at one point started to work at MCM. We don't know much of where she worked before this, but we know she had a talent for both puppet making and voice acting. She's a creative that already has experience in a very similar field. Meanwhile, Edwin is the exact opposite of Fiona. He's a nepo baby, only known as the son of the owner. He seemingly has no experience yet in the work field, and only creates out of his own free will in his free time, not needing his creativity to survive. Over time, Fiona and Edwin seem to grow closer to one another, starting a relationship. Some unspecified time later, Edwin's father dies, leaving the company to his son. Unlike his father, Edwin is not confident in himself. He is not a leader and has no experience being one, and probably is also not interested in the whole costume ordeal. But Fiona motivates him to use his own talent as a way to make the company better, inspiring Edwin to mass produce his previous inventions as part of their business.
If you could change anything you wanted, what would it be?
Maybe rebrand? We could start making some of my inventions for real.
Not long after, Edwin chooses to make Fiona a higher-up alongside himself. This causes the factory to kind of split into two sections. In one, Edwin makes invention after invention, coming up with ideas so fast that the poor employees can't keep up with him. He's the one behind inventions like the Cleanovac, the Mycelium Man, the wonderful coach rack, the stay-up latte machine. Meanwhile, from notes we find throughout the game, Fiona seems to mostly focus on MCM's original product, mascot costumes. We learn that the earliest version of the Chica mascot, for Chica's Party World, was designed by Fiona herself. The puppets from the Foxy puppet show are seemingly also made by her. And based off one of the notes referring to the character blueprints as Fiona's character blueprints, we can come to the simple conclusion that most of the mascot costumes we see in Secret of the Mimic were originally designed by her. She's the one keeping the costume part of the costume manor alive. But of course, the change in direction causes some friction with the staff. They're unable to keep up with Edwin's new ideas that seem to change on a whim. Fiona, once a worker herself, understands her fellow employees. In multiple notes and voice clips we can find in the game, we can hear Fiona refer to her co-workers by name. She sees her fellow employees as friends, equals. But that same respect is not coming from Edwin. He seems to be emotionally disconnected from them, not understanding their needs. So because of Fiona's position, she is the one who's forced to be the bridge between Edwin and the employees. She's forced to be Edwin's voice of reason to keep MCM a comfortable place for her co-workers.
Your creative energy is amazing, and I love you for it. But I think you need to step back a little and focus on one project at a time.
But slowly, Edwin's self-centered behavior starts to also seep into their relationship. His wife Fiona has a hard time contacting him anymore, being forced to talk to him through the Mrs. Helpful animatronic.
Ed, I hate talking to you through this stupid bear, but it's hard to reach you otherwise.
And when his son is born, it also feels like he can't emotionally connect with him either. This is illustrated in David's first birthday tape, where Edwin doesn't seem to understand his own son is crying when he scares him with the Roxy puppet. saying David actually likes it when Fiona says he's scaring their son.
No, he loves it. Look, see? He loves it. Arr! Yarr! Arr! Yarr!
And this tape perfectly illustrates Edwin's character. He doesn't see what's in front of him, just convincing himself that how he feels about something also must be how everyone else is feeling. He likes the puppet, so his son must also like the puppet. Meanwhile, Fiona is the one that constantly needs to tell him how people around him are really feeling, because without her, Edwin just disregards and ignores other people's emotions. And all of this comes crashing down once Fiona dies. Out of concern for her fellow employees, she chooses to go to Fall Fest where the MCM employees are installing some kind of installation. But unfortunately, the fair catches fire, and Fiona doesn't make it out alive. With Fiona gone, Edwin's voice of reason is gone as well. This completely cuts the employees off from their boss, and this causes the company to slowly go downhill. Edwin starts to introduce new inventions that are convenient to him, but completely work against the interest of the employees. He makes a digityper that can replace human staff, a nurse robot that collects trash to replace the sorting staff, and worst of all, he makes an AI-generated puppet show product to replace puppeteers and actors. Not only is this disrespectful to his fellow employees, he made a machine that replaces his own wife's passion. Imagine being an artist and you start dating a man that makes an AI that can generate AI pictures. This just shows how completely out of touch Edwin really is with the people around him, even the people the most closest to him. And things don't go better for his son either, who he mostly seems to emotionally neglect, leaving him alone most of the time so he can work on new inventions. But one day, he chooses to use one of his new inventions to replace David's babysitter. Because if a machine would look after his son, he would be able to save money. This led to the creation of the Mimic, specifically M1. It was created as an endoskeleton that could fit into any costume suit and be able to replicate any personality.
David, I want to introduce you to someone. This is M1.
Why does it look like that?
Look like what?
It's scary.
Oh, it's an endoskeleton. It won't always look like this. It'll wear fun costumes.
Like what?
Anything you want. It can fit into any costume we've created. Think of it as your new babysitter. But doesn't get paid and go home. It'll stay with us and help around the house.
Throughout the game, we learn that M1 slowly started to replicate Edwin's dead wife, Fiona, making Edwin fully convinced that he somehow brought her back from the dead. But M1 isn't anything like the real Fiona. Instead of pushing him to do the right thing, M1 is constantly enabling his bad behavior. Just like how a real AI chatbot, like ChatGPT, always tries to be agreeable and be your #1 supporter. But M1 is just that, a soulless copy of Fiona, a version of her without any of her original passions, hobbies, or personality. She's nothing more than an obedient wife who takes care of their son. And somehow, Edwin is convinced she's the same person as the woman he once loved. In the meantime, Edwin continues to neglect his employees in other ways, giving them longer shifts, firing them for questioning him, and even denying them vacation days. Every single choice Edwin makes is to save money and make his own life easier, while also making horrible business decisions in the process. After all his products are failing. He gets complaint after complaint, but he doesn't change anything about the business. The employees are slowly starting to grow resentful of Edwin. They're treated as nothing more than a cog in Edwin's big machine. A cog that could easily be replaced any moment by a shiny new invention. And it doesn't take long for someone to take advantage of the situation and plant a mole inside of the business. Fazbear Entertainment CEO William Afton abuses the crumbling empire of Edwin to his advantage, convincing the employees to work for him instead, hiring them without any requirements, even giving them bonuses if they're able to give him the contact info of the other MCM employees. Meanwhile, other employees choose to rebel, stealing blueprints from Edwin to start their own company. And some employees even leak some information about a certain endoskeleton Edwin made. And in the end, Edwin is left alone, trying his best to save his fallen empire, being left to work on a project for the people that are, unknowing to him, stealing away all his employees. And in the end, he's left with nothing. A lot of people think Edwin is a victim of circumstance, a tragic character that had everything taken away from him by an evil purple man and his rotten company. But in reality, he dug his own grave. He's the antagonist of the story. Everything that happened to him was because of his own selfish actions and his lack of care for the people around him. Edwin is the one who pushed everyone away from him, his employees, his friends, and worst of all, his own family. So, remember that puppet show I was venting about earlier? Yeah, the video is actually about that puppet show. You may think now, Clovis, what in God's name does this puppet show have to do with Edwin and Fiona? Well, actually more than you realize. The puppet show, at first glance, seems to be mostly relevant to Fiona's character. Yes, the machine may be made to replace her, but all the elements of the show tie back to her. Fiona was a puppeteer, and we learned from David's birthday tapes that the puppets we see during the show were made by Fiona herself. But the story of the show itself is what fascinates me the most, and is what I want to analyze today in this video. The thing that makes the story so interesting is the fact that it isn't the first time we've heard the story in the franchise. But let's start at the beginning. The puppet show opens up with our two main characters, Kit and Foxy the Pirate Fox. Foxy has told his crew that he's planning to host a surprise party today, but Kit forgot to get a present. Foxy calls the whole pirate crew together to discuss what to do about this. But Foxy quickly finds out that everybody has forgotten a gift for the party. The noise the pirate crew is making wakes up the sleeping captain. The captain wakes up, worried, thinking that the ship may be under attack. But instead of seeing a ship being attacked by rival pirates, he sees his ship is covered in decorations instead. This causes the pirate captain to start scolding Foxy, since hosting parties goes against the pirate rules.
Did you forget pirate rule number 22? No parties!
But while Foxy tries his best to cover up the surprise party, Bernard, one of Foxy's crew members, brings out the snacks he just prepared for the party. The sight of snacks angers the captain even more, saying party snacks are also against the pirate rules. Not long after, pirate member Boston returns from their quarters with the perfect gift for the surprise party. But before Foxy can compliment them, the ship gets attacked by a rogue octopus that steals the birthday gift. The captain angrily tells them that this is why boat parties are against pirate rules, since octopi are drawn to them. But Foxy quickly takes action, assembling the pirate crew to defeat the octopus together. After putting up a daring fight, they are able to scare away the octopus. The captain compliments Foxy and his crew, telling them how proud he is of them. He has never seen them work together like a real crew before. The comments of the captain make Kit shout in joy, realizing that thanks to their teamwork, they were able to give the captain the perfect birthday present: friendship.
The perfect present was friendship all along.
Then the show ends by the captain informing that today actually wasn't his birthday. His birthday was last week, ending the story with a comedic twist, and also making the whole theater collapse, but that's not really relevant to this theory. This puppet show may seem pretty random at first glance, but the meaning of this is actually pretty straightforward, and pretty ironic. The story is clearly about teamwork. First mate Foxy learns how to work together with his fellow crew members to fight a common enemy, learning friendship is the real gift all along. Foxy in display clearly is meant to symbolize Edwin, and him working together with his pirate crew is supposed to symbolize Edwin learning how to work together with his own staff members. But in reality, this is a lesson Edwin never learned. The existence of the puppet show itself says as much. The puppet show, a show telling a story about working together as a team, was made to take away people's jobs. It's cruel, but fitting for a character that is as unaware as Edwin. What's also interesting is that Foxy in the story isn't the captain of the ship. The story specifies that he's the first mate, the second in command. This means that the captain possibly represents Edwin's father, implying that the ship only survived because of Edwin Sr.'s leadership. But that's not everything. The craziest thing is that this isn't the first time we've heard this story. Back in 2019, Help Wanted updated with a brand new DLC, The Curse of Dreadbear. This expansion to the game contained multiple Halloween-themed minigames, one of them being Foxy's Pirate Adventure. Foxy's Pirate Adventure is a minigame that takes place at some kind of carnival dark ride. During the ride, you're required to shoot at targets to gain points, similarly to how you're supposed to shoot targets to progress the MCM puppet show. The story of the ride follows a very similar plot to Foxy's puppet show. The story opens up with Foxy sailing the 7 seas. Unlike the previous story, First Mate Foxy doesn't seem to be part of a crew anymore, but instead he's a lonely captain. While Foxy is sailing the 7 seas for treasure, the weather suddenly shifts. The once blue sky is now filled with storm clouds, making the once peaceful sea a way more dangerous place. But Foxy quickly finds out this isn't just a normal storm. It's one caused by a giant sea creature that wants to attack the ship, the Kraken. His tentacles attack the ship, and Foxy is forced to defend himself from the vile sea monster. He attacks it with a sword, but it's no use. Eventually, Foxy is forced to use one of his cannons to attack the Kraken.
Fire in the hole!
The cannon shot causes Foxy to fall into the water, and the Kraken to drag him down into the depths of the ocean. Foxy wakes up underwater, trying his best to hold his breath. He sees all kinds of sea life, like colorful schools of fishes, jellyfish, and even a mermaid. But he also comes eye to eye with 2 ghost pirates who are defending their sunken treasure. Then, the next scene switches to Foxy being back on land, suddenly out of nowhere befriending the Kraken and celebrating a birthday party. Foxy declares that the real treasure was friendship all along.
The real treasure was friendship all along. Happy birthday!
Okay, well, that ending kind of came out of left field, didn't it? If we take a step back, we can see the overall story is the exact same story, only with some details removed or changed. Foxy's crew is now removed from the story. Foxy's also the captain of the ship now instead of the first mate. Instead of trying to prepare a surprise party and find the perfect gift, Foxy's now trying to find treasure. But similar to the surprise party, his search for treasure lures a creature to the ship. The innocent-looking octopus is now replaced with a monstrous kraken in this story. And even though Foxy fights the monster just like he did in the puppet show, without his crew he loses the fight against the kraken. But even after losing, somehow the same moral is still attached to the end of the story. Instead of a gift, friendship is now the real treasure all along. The ending is even themed after a birthday party. Something that doesn't even make sense anymore with all the details that have been stripped away from the original plot. What I'm trying to say is that these 2 stories are the exact same story, but it's like the story has been passed through a game of telephone, making certain details incomprehensible. A good example of this phenomenon are classic fairy tales. Fairy tales are stories that most of the time can be traced back to a certain author. Yes, we may know a few popular authors that wrote them down, like the Brothers Grimm, but these stories have existed long before the brothers were even born. They are stories that have been orally passed down for multiple generations. And as the story keeps being passed down, details get rewritten, context gets lost, until the story completely transforms into a different kind of story. And often, certain details don't make sense unless we look back at earlier versions of the same story. A good example of this is the story of Cinderella. The most popularized version of this tale is the Disney movie, which mostly takes inspiration from the version written down by the French author Charles Perrault in 1697 in his book The Tales of Mother Goose. We all know the story. It's about a girl that's abused about her stepfamily and works as a housemaid in her own home. The castle hosts a party and invites all the single women of the land to present themselves to the prince, so he may choose a bride. But Cinderella isn't allowed to go. But luckily, her fairy godmother steps in and gives Cinderella a beautiful dress and glass slippers to attend the ball with. This is the most famous version of the tale, but there are other versions that seem way different. The Brothers Grimm version, for example, from 1812, is pretty similar, having a very similar setup, but instead of a fairy godmother, Cinderella is helped by a tree that she planted next to her mother's grave. When she calls out to the tree for help, the tree drops down a golden gown with golden slippers for her to go to the ball with. If you take a step back, these stories are the same. But how in God's name did we get from a fairy godmother to a magical tree? Why are these stories the same, but also different at the same time? Well, the seemingly random change in the story makes sense if we look back at an even older version of the tale to find the missing context. In this case, it's a story called Cinderella Cat from Giambattista Basile's book The Pentamerone that was released in 1634. In this version of the story, Cinderella, whose name Cesolia, is given a gift by the Queen of the Fairies. This gift in question is a tree. Cesolia makes sure to take good care of the tree and plant it in a pot. She waters and cleans it with a silken napkin every day. After 4 days, the tree grows so big that a fairy is born inside of it. A fairy that tells Cesolia that she will fulfill any wish the girl desires. And there you have it. Both the Grimm and Perrault version of the story are descendants from the Basile version of the tale. A fairy in a tree becomes a magical tree in one version and a fairy godmother in another version. It's no different with Foxy's tale, where the removal of the crew completely changes the context of the ending, which, if you look at the previous version of the tale, was actually about a surprise birthday party. The same elements are still there in the pirate-wide story, but the story makes less sense because of the removed context. But at the same time, these changes aren't as random as they may seem. This is the version of the story that was later adapted by Fazbear Entertainment. The most peculiar story change they made was making the antagonistic squid of the original story into an ally by the end of the tale. While in the original story, Foxy defeats the squid with his crew and was able to defend the ship, in this version, the Kraken is able to overpower his ship and take it from Foxy now that he doesn't have a crew to fight with. This causes the fox to almost drown. So in the end, Foxy has no other choice but to give up and join the Kraken. And the story presents this as a good thing, presenting Foxy's relationship with the Kraken as the real treasure. But I think it's pretty clear what this version of the story is. While the original MCM puppet show depicted what Edwin could have achieved, this ride depicts what really happened. The squid in the original symbolized Fazbear Entertainment, a company that wanted to take over Edwin's ship, but was unable to do so because of Edwin's strong connection with his co-workers. But of course, this isn't what actually happened. Like Foxy in the ride, Edwin was left all alone, causing the Kraken to successfully overpower the ship. And of course, Fazbear Entertainment depicts this incident as a good thing, since they're the ones telling the story. Interestingly, there are a few more details in the story I want to call out. Firstly, Foxy is only able to escape the Kraken temporarily by causing an explosion with his cannon and falling into the ocean. This could be a reference to Edwin's explosion we hear about near the end of the game. The explosion that possibly cost him his life, symbolizing he was only able to escape Fazbear Entertainment's clutches by literally dying. And once Foxy drowns, he comes face to face with the treasure he was looking for, guarded by 2 ghost pirates, a rabbit and a bear, which would be pretty ironic if they symbolized William and Henry respectively. Once the MCM catalog was theirs, they were the ones who ran away with Edwin's treasure, his and Fiona's creations, and they sure made a lot of money out of it. But what if you kept telling the same story over and over again? It can end up like a game of telephone. The sentence you originally whispered into the ear of one person gets passed on to another and another, until the last person in line is left with complete gibberish. This is exactly how I feel about our next story, Foxy's Cowboy Adventure. Just like Fazer Blast, Foxy's Pirate Adventure also got a Pizzaplex remake. We first learn about this attraction in Rune, where we run into an unfinished version of this ride. But we do play a finished version of the ride in Help Wanted 2. Here we see a modern remake of Foxy's Pirate Adventure. This time, Captain Foxy is a cowboy? The story opens up with Pirate Foxy on his pirate ship, still sailing the 7 seas. That is until he declares he's gonna set sail for adventure, and climbs inside a cannon and shoots himself over to the Wild West. I'm not kidding, that's what the ride implies happened. Now we see Foxy all dressed up as a cowboy, enjoying some kind of party. Glamrock Chica is also there, together with a whole group of small critters. From the sign we can learn this town is called Brightstone, and seems to be a local village of miners. In the next scene we are at the train station. A sheep conductor is standing outside the train. I'm assuming Foxy is gonna take the train somewhere? But once we enter the train, we get ambushed by a bunch of bandits who want our money. Luckily, we are able to escape them by going into a random cave. After going through the scary cave, we end up back in town, where we see Chica serving drinks and Foxy playing piano. As we continue, we get attacked by the bandits again, but we defeat them by shooting them with our gun. The story ends with Foxy saying that friendship was the real treasure all along.
And the real treasure was friendship all along.
What in the Freddy above just happened? The story of this dark ride literally makes no sense. It's possible I'm missing some context, since there are textures of Foxy getting captured and exploring the cave, but I couldn't actually find them anywhere inside of the ride. But even if they were in the ride, they don't really fix the mess that is this story. This story completely ruins what the original story was about, removing so much context and adding random details that just become meaningless. This story means nothing. This story says nothing. It's the result of Fazbear changing the story so much over the years that it becomes meaningless. But still, the story being meaningless actually tells us a lot. The first version of the story we discussed was an original story made by MCM, a story about teamwork that was ironically fed to an AI machine made to replace workers. The second was a version of the story that was made once Fazbear Entertainment got their hands on the MCM catalog, changing the original story to make it their own. And the final version is made by modern Fazbear Entertainment, after the events of Help Wanted, a company that is desperately trying to cover up its past. The original ride reflected what really happened between Edwin and Fazbear Entertainment. Meanwhile, Foxy's Cowboy Adventure tries its best to cover it up, turning it into something completely meaningless. But that's not the only meaning the story has to offer. In reality, there is an even older version of the Foxy story presented in Secret of the Mimic. Just like a classic fairy tale, it's impossible to find out where the original story originated from. But when it comes to Foxy's story, I think this version is as close as we'll get to the original. In Secret of the Mimic, there is a secret ending you can only unlock by replaying the game. If you collect all the collectibles required to beat the Moon.exe minigame, you gain access to the glitch permission. This glitch permission can be used to unlock new areas in Edwin's house that were originally inaccessible. Every single one of these rooms contains an audio cassette. Once you collected all 6 audio cassettes, it opens up a vent that will lead you to David's room. If you retrieve the tiger plush and put it on its little pedestal, you unlock the original story. The story in the game is randomized depending on the randomized code you get, but every version of the story has the same structure. The story opens up with 2 animals having fun with each other.
A clumsy chicken came and spilled her marbles. They had fun picking them up.
A roly-poly bear sat down and offered a pot of honey. They ate with glee.
Then a third animal joins them and does something that causes the group of animals to argue and fight.
An angry alligator came by and promised not to eat anyone, but then he ate one of them.
Then the crafty fox came over and challenged all of them to a race, but he cheated to win.
A fourth animal comes around and sees the group fighting, making them scared and running away.
The puppy saw everyone arguing. The group yelled and gnashed their teeth, and it scared the puppy, and she ran away.
The animals are shocked about what they did, and realize that anger doesn't solve anything. So they make up with one another and start a band together.
This shocked all the friends, and they realized that anger didn't solve anything. They all started a band and lived happily ever after. The moral of the story is that friendship is the real treasure.
This is a short and simple story with a pretty clear moral. The story feels like an early draft of what eventually became the Foxy Puppet Show. It's similar to how a lot of famous fairy tales originate from simple myths. In this version of the story, it's also clear who it's told by. Edwin and M1, telling the story to David before he goes to sleep. By the fact the machine is activated by the tiger plush, I assume that this is something Edwin made after the death of Fiona for his son David. A recording of Edwin and what sounds like the voice of Fiona, reading their son a bedtime story so he can go to sleep. This way, Edwin could keep working without wasting time to read a story for David. But this also implies that before Fiona died, he probably did read stories to David with her. I think this story was originally told by Fiona and Edwin to David before Fiona's death, telling their little baby boy stories together before he went to sleep. But just like everything, Edwin had to make a machine to do the storytelling instead, once Fiona was gone. This storytelling machine may also be one of the reasons why M1 started to copy Fiona in the first place. Edwin wanted to make an AI replica of his wife's voice, so that it could read his son's stories through this machine, using M1 as a way to replicate it. But being used as David's babysitter, and being used as a machine to replicate his wife's voice, eventually caused M1 to develop into the obedient and soulless copy of the real Fiona. But also, symbolically, this version of the story also reflects the motivations of M1 during the game. Not only does this story literally fix M2 and turn him into David, but the story itself also represents this transformation. Just like the original story, the animal friends lash out in anger, causing them to fight with one another, until they change their ways and learn to work together to start a band. While the core of the Foxy show is about working together and friendship, this story focuses on learning how to control your anger. The Foxy puppet show is about the moral Edwin needed to learn. Meanwhile, this one is about the moral M2 needs to learn, so he can be fixed. And that's it. That's the history of Foxy's story as far as we know it. But there's also another way to interpret these stories. Originally, this third chapter was gonna focus on the other story of the Foxy rides, that being the secret routes you can unlock by shooting the Helpy signs. But during the writing of the script, I further discussed this topic with my friend Zarek, going back and forth on the evidence. I slowly began to find out there can be a second interpretation to the Foxy stories. And you can achieve that interpretation by treating all three stories as parts of the same story. And surprisingly, it seems to be the story of Edwin Murray himself. The original story would be about Edwin's past. The story represents MCM when it was still being controlled by Edwin Sr., who is represented in the story by the captain. First Mate Foxy represents Edwin, the next in command to become the captain of the ship. We learn from the audio tapes that Edwin Sr. was aware of Fazbear Entertainment, and he warned his son about them. In this way, the squid would still represent Fazbear Entertainment. In this version of the story, Edwin successfully learns this lesson, and learns how to work together with his crew and become a worthy successor. But like mentioned before, this doesn't happen in reality. This play is an idealized version of what really happened. Meanwhile, Foxy's Pirate Adventure is about the aftermath of what really happened. The ride represents Edwin right before the events of Secret of the Mimic. Instead of being the first mate, Foxy is now the captain of the ship. A captain that is desperately looking for treasure. Just like the real Edwin, Foxy has lost his pirate crew, making him an easy target for the Kraken. The Kraken, who represents Fazbear Entertainment, is successfully able to take over the ship, forcing Foxy to abandon the ship by causing an explosion. Like I said before, I think this explosion is a parallel to the explosion Edwin accidentally causes to his office in Secret of the Mimic. This could symbolize that the injuries of the explosion indeed caused Edwin's death, making it easier for Fazbear to take over his company. But it could also mean the opposite. Let's focus on the last part of the story, Foxy's Cowboy Adventure. This story opens up with a very similar scene. Foxy abandoning a ship and escaping to the Wild West by causing an explosion. This scene directly parallels the scene of the previous ride, but instead of it being near the end, it's at the beginning of the story. In this scene, we can even see the exact same cutout of Foxy escaping the explosion from Foxy's Pirate Adventure, hanging above the entrance of the cannon. It's the only reused cutout in the whole ride. It's like the story starts where the previous story left off. If the story is truly about Edwin, the ride can be interpreted in two different ways. Foxy's Cowboy Adventure either symbolizes Edwin's afterlife, or it shows us what happened to Edwin after he survived the explosion. And boy, I'll admit I'm not a fan of the second option. But I feel, compared to the other two stories, that this one is the most up to interpretation. Because if all the rides are about Edwin's story, that means this ride depicts a part of Edwin's story that hasn't been explored in the games yet. If you look at the ride from that standpoint, it does start to make a bit more sense. It's showing us what Edwin has been doing after the failure of his company. He's just been traveling the world, going to distant lands, exploring caves, taking the train far, far away from here. Foxy in this ride is just partying and messing around, far away from the responsibilities of his pirate ship. He's a pirate that's desperately trying to be a cowboy, escaping from the life he once had. He's a captain that abandoned his ship, and this would be very similar to what happens to Edwin in the Tales from the Pizzaplex books. After the events of the Mimic story, he also goes on a very long vacation, for 30 years to be exact, until he eventually returns to the Fazbear Company in The Storyteller. But then there's also another way to look at things. One detail I didn't mention, and didn't notice until later, is that at the start of the ride, during the explosion scene, there isn't just one Foxy cutout, but two. The existence of the second Foxy further reinforces the parallels between Foxy's explosion and the explosion to Edwin's office, since M2 started to copy Edwin after the explosion happened.
Help! M2! Respond! Emergency! Call for help! Daddy's busy, buddy. Why don't you go outside and play?
This would mean the second Foxy in the scene represents M2 copying Edwin. This leaves open the possibility that the Foxy we follow during this story isn't actually Edwin, but M2. He's now a walking version of Edwin's legacy after he passed away, implying that Foxy drowning in the original ride did indeed symbolize Edwin passing away. Let's say he's literally and symbolically swimming with the fishes. This fact would completely recontextualize what the ride is about. Instead of Edwin, we're following M2 after the events of Edwin's death. The random critters in the ride may represent the many costumes in the factory. Chica being there represents M1's presence in the factory, symbolized by the character Fiona originally designed. It could even mean that the mermaid Chica in the original ride represents Fiona in the afterlife. It would even recontextualize the random robbers and thieves trying to ambush Foxy during the ride. They're supposed to represent the many Fazbear Entertainment employees trying to break into the facility to capture and retrieve M2. Of course, M2 would see these employees as robbers breaking into his home. But this interpretation also leaves us with another implication. During the ride, Foxy goes into a cave, which could symbolize the cave we see the player character of Moon.exe go into to be reborn. It's widely agreed upon that we play as M2 during that minigame. And if the Foxy ride is supposed to be a reflection of real events, that does imply that the Moon.exe ending is the one that canonically happened. Because at the end of the ride, Foxy does learn that friendship is the true treasure all along. The exact same moral that makes M2 turn into David at the end of the story in the secret ending. But it could also be an idealized ending, depicting events that didn't happen, similar to the ending of the MCM puppet show. But in the end, I'm still very unsure about the symbolism in this minigame. Unlike the other two stories, this one can be interpreted in so many different ways. It leaves us with the question of which Foxy the story is really about. Is the cowboy Foxy supposed to represent Edwin, or is he supposed to represent M2? Only the future may tell what the actual answer is. So, be sure to let me know in the comments below what you think the implication of this ride is. So, I originally planned this video to go on after this, but after adding this whole section to the script, I've chosen to make this theory a two-parter. Next video, I will be discussing the other story we can find in both Foxy rides, and how they connect to the story of the Murray family. This was Klaveski, and I'll see you in the next part. Thanks for watching.
This is a song that doesn't end. Yes, it goes on and on, my friend. Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was, and they'll continue singing it forever just because this is a song that doesn't end.
Oh no!
Yes, it goes on and on, my friend. Some people started singing it, not knowing what it was.
Okay, that's enough.
Just because this is a song that doesn't
How many times are you gonna sing this?
goes on and on, my friend. Some people started singing it, not knowing what
This is the last time, right? Okay, I get the joke. Okay, that's it. I have had it. No more. Now this song has gone on long enough.